The NBA offseason is officially off to the races, and both the Philadelphia 76ers and Knicks are at the forefront of all the conversations. With me to break it down in a little bit higher spirits than myself, I got my guy Chris Gallagher over there from Knicks Digest. Does an awesome job breaking everything down. And to kick things off, Chris, let me throw you the ropes. Run the victory lap. Talk to me. How you feeling? How gassed up are you after the Mikal Bridges trade?
I think my favorite part that I'm happy to bring up to you as someone who is a 76ers fan is the fact that Mikal Bridges is from Philadelphia and he specifically wanted to go to the Knicks and no other team. All right, but in all seriousness, I just had to get that out. So already the Sixers fans hate me. But in all seriousness, I'm so thrilled. I thought he was the perfect fit for a lot of teams. Let's be real. He's one of those guys who fits so well everywhere. But he's got that rapport with so many of the Knicks players. The Nova Knicks connection is real. That was a great tweet you sent out to Villanova is no longer a Philly school. That was great. Look, it's the perfect fit for the Knicks. They clearly needed a little bit more guard defense. I'm a huge OG Anunoby fan. We're going to talk about him a lot. But I'm not going to sit here and lie. Tyrese Maxey was lighting OG up. He was just too quick for OG. And now the Knicks have a guy who is a better guard defender than OG is. And forwards, an elite on-ball defender who can keep up with guards, who can hit threes like crazy. One of the best corner three-point shooters in the league. The only guy in the 2020s to have over 370 corner threes made. Phenomenal pickup for my Knicks. Obviously a bit of a loss for you guys seeing your Philadelphian end up here. But you also love his mom, so you know that.
We do have that. You hit on a lot of great points there, and I think you're absolutely right that he is a guy that is one of the more malleable players across the NBA. You can pretty much plug and play him on any team, and he's going to be effective. And I think he is a perfect fit for what the Knicks need. Now, to dive into specifically what he brings to the table, pull up his stats here, that with Mikal Bridges last season, averaging 19.6 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 3.6 assists, shot 37.2% from the field, 40.5% from the corner. For what it's worth, to give the full package here for what was traded, we got a massive haul that we're talking in total 6 first-round picks. Is there any concern that you gave up too much for Mikal Bridges?
Absolutely. Always when you see 6 first-round picks, it doesn't matter who you just traded for. Mikal, obviously, the rebuttal to it is the Knicks just gave up 4 first-round picks for a guy who is not an all-star. That's fair. It's a fair argument. We also gave that 2025 Bucks pick protected 1-4, which I thought was an excellent draft pick because you never know what's going to happen with the Bucks. It seems like things are kind of a mess over there for as much talent as they have. I'm obviously concerned. The Knicks are a young team. They're not the youngest team. They're young enough where in 2030, they shouldn't all be washed and terrible to where the Nets are just landing a top 3 pick or anything. But there does come that concern because the clock's now on for the Knicks. They have to go out there, and if they don't win a finals at any point with this roster, you look at that as a failure. That is what the Knicks have done. They've thrown all their chips in on this guy who I've said on Knicks Digest 10 different times, I think the Knicks getting Mikal and only giving up Bojan Bogdanovic, like exactly what happened, gives them an excellent chance to win the finals for the next 4 to 5 years. Now, obviously, you never know what's going to happen, but barring something unforeseen, I think the Knicks will be title contenders.
Yeah. So I'm going to approach this for 2 angles real quick. I'll start a little neutral NBA guy, then I want to take the Sixers NBA slant here. So neutral NBA fan, I got to respect the way the Knicks have built this up, that they have done it the right way. These guys are all likable guys. We know there is the Villanova connection. And just to spit out what the rotation is looking like, we're talking about Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, potentially OG Anunoby, who we will get to in a second, Julius Randle, potentially Isaiah Hartenstein, who I also want to get your thoughts on, Deuce McBride, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson. That is a good basketball team right there. Now, if I want to put on my Sixers color lenses right here, really, you guys built a role player super team is essentially what you're doing. And I get, like, you can argue that there's below market value for guys like Mikal Bridges, guys like Jalen Brunson, who's certainly on more of the bargain contracts. But there comes a point where you basically made your all-in push for these guys. And I get there's the Villanova familiarity. I get that essentially these guys know how to play together. You know how it works. But kind of from the Sixers perspective, there's a part of me that feels a little bit relieved now that I digested it, that when these big fish come to the market, the Knicks are no longer a team team waiting that you guys aren't going to be able to flip for if Kevin Durant comes available. And I think Donovan Mitchell kind of was out of the picture because of the fit with Brunson and everything like that. But these bigger top ticket free agents, the Knicks just made their push for Mikal Bridges. And I do think there's a real world where there could be a higher level talent that becomes available. And now the Knicks are out of the running for that type of just, I guess, bidding war is the way to put it.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. When you look at things, there was a lot of winners and very few losers in this Mikal Bridges trade. I think the biggest winners, well, the Nets finally have a direction and they have their
Absolutely.
2025 pick back. So they're arguably the biggest winner of everyone because the haul they got for Mikal Bridges, and if you go farther than the tree, Kevin Durant. But it's also the Knicks win because they get their guy. They get who they wanted. Their team looks great. It is a team full of role players, but the way the NBA looks nowadays, 2 all-star level players and a bunch of role players is a championship contender. We're no longer in the era of super teams where you just want to get as many all-stars as possible.
Sure.
The way with the second apron and all that, it makes that difficult. Now, the Knicks are going to have some contracts to pay out, but there's only one max guy on the Knicks. I don't think Julius Randle is going to get a max from the Knicks. You have one in Jalen Brunson. Outside of that, they should be able to make the money work. Now, specifically, and there's going to be a Knicks Digest video on this exact topic, they're going to lose Isaiah Hartenstein. He's not going to be back on the Knicks next year, which hurts, but it's not someone like, oh, the Knicks lost Hartenstein. There goes their championship window. It's over. He's irreplaceable. That's not the case. The big fear is that Mitchell Robinson has a bunch of health concerns.
Right.
That's why you want Hartenstein. Outside of that, I think the 76ers are a winner in this trade also because exactly what you said. The Knicks, they still have 7 first-round picks, but with the stipend rule, with some of these picks being a swap worst, the Knicks are not in the running anymore. So many teams can outbid them now. Obviously, the Sixers are one of them. They are out of the running for any other star. That part is over. So, yeah, I think the 76ers, they do benefit from this because now arguably the most enticing market in the Knicks, and I think the 76ers are the other one. It was kind of a debate between those two, who's the most enticing team to go to. The other one just dropped out.
Yeah.
The Sixers are in an excellent position to go out there and get somebody. It's so unclear who that somebody is, but with that max slot, with your draft picks, you guys are in a perfect position to basically counteract what the Knicks just did and say, all right, y'all are going all in, so are we.
Yeah.
And we still have an MVP. We have Tyrese Maxey, who's not going to stop being an all-star anytime soon. We have no one else on the roster, but that's
literally.
fine. Yeah, literally, it's just Paul Reed. But you'll work it out, and everyone knows that. It's not the most uncommon thing to see that. So I think you guys are in great position right now, and I'm definitely worried about who the 76ers are going to go after because it could be someone really good.
And it's funny you bring that up because one of the names that I do want to bring up for this conversation is OG Anunoby. And to set the scene here, we know that the Knicks kind of made this all-in push for OG Anunoby midseason. And he proved himself as the perfect fit for that team. That we saw the record with him on that team. We saw how important he was and how much he raised the ceiling of that overall team. And for what it's worth, we did get this report pretty much immediately following saying that the Knicks are still determined to keep OG Anunoby in free agency. Now, you mentioned the apron and the cap ramifications there, and there's a lot to break down with this. That obviously the trade is not completed and will not be until the new league year, so a little bit to work with it. But as of now, New York is adding money in the Bridges deal, which would hard cap them at the first apron. And for what it's worth, when breaking down what that means, we're talking about some severe limitations for sign and trade type situations, matching money, and just the number that you can ultimately go up to. So there are some real deal concerns for what this brings on. From my read, a little bit from afar here, probably further than you, that I initially viewed this as there's no doubt that OG is going to get his money from the Knicks. When they traded for him, I thought that was the other part of the deal, that you don't make that sort of investment in a player if you don't plan on having them around for the long haul. Judging from afar, it feels like it has not been that seamless of a transition, and I do think that there is a world where OG is a little bit upset at them kind of hopping the line by bringing in a Bridges who's a similar player to him. So, just Chris, from your perspective, what's kind of the outlook for the Knicks on keeping OG Anunoby, and do you think that happens?
There's been a lot of reports about OG, and it seems like after the Bridges deal, as you brought up, the Knicks have been determined to keep him. There was a report that OG essentially has the Knicks, and for censorship, I'll say the throat. I think people can infer where I was going with that, but that you can't let OG walk anymore because then you're no longer a contender. You lose OG, you're no longer a contender. You have to basically say, I guess we're giving him nearly $40 million. Because there's no other option. We can't
Right.
lose the man. It would look so bad. No matter what, it's still a black eye on the team. If you trade RJ and IQ for OG Anunoby and then OG just walks,
Right.
that is such a black eye on this New York Knicks regime that has been the best front office in the last 25 years that they've had. Like, you cannot let that happen. I don't think they will. Knicks president Leon Rose, his son Sam, who works for CAA, is literally OG's agent. It's hard to imagine in my mind that OG walks. And New York Knicks beat writer Fred Katz, who's very connected, said,
Very good. Yeah.
yeah, he's a great dude. He literally was like, it doesn't seem like a team that just traded 4 unprotected first-round picks. I don't think a team would do that if they think they're going to lose OG Anunoby in free agency. That doesn't make much sense. And I think he's absolutely right. So I think OG will return. There's suitors for him. But I actually have a question about OG for you because at this point, it's very clear.
Yeah.
There is one suitor other than the Knicks for OG. It's the Sixers. Do you really want to get into a bidding war with the Knicks about OG Anunoby? I understand he's great. As a Knicks fan, I saw us go 22-5 when he was there. But you guys have a lot of other options, especially with the Knicks being out of play for other stars. There's better players that you guys could get. Like, from your perspective, is that something you'd really rather go into? I'm genuinely asking. Like, I don't know where the Sixers fans are at.
Yeah, I'm mostly in your camp, to be perfectly honest. I like OG. The biggest concern to me is, number one, the health injuries are absolutely legit. That he's a guy that straight up is not available that often. And one of the biggest things that I'm looking for in like this third star calculation is a guy that can carry the team when Joel Embiid's not going to be there. Because we know that's part of the deal of having Joel Embiid. He's not going to be available on an every night basis. That's not OG Anunoby. It doesn't fit the job description. And I also think, like, to flash it back, I think this Knicks team is in a very similar situation if we want to look back at like the 2018 era Sixers, which when you look at that season, the Sixers made their all-in push that they traded all their young talent and picks for Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris. Jimmy Butler did not work out, and while he's certainly a head case beyond what any of these guys were mentioning with Mikal Bridges and OG, it was clear that he wasn't re-signing with the team. That's not the case with OG, but somewhat parallels that, like, you know, leaving after making that investment. Now, the other guy here was Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris was never viewed as the better player. It was just the cleaner, less problematic option, and the Sixers made all their investment in that. My concern when making this parallel is OG, while he's a better player than Tobias Harris, he's a guy that you're basically paying max money that I think likely goes the entirety of his NBA career without making an all-star game. And even if he is healthy and available, I'm skeptical of being capable of running offense through the guy. That I know there's Tyrese Maxey, I know there's Joel Embiid, but really what OG is maximized is he's a guy that I think is a corner three-point shooter and can attack off a closeout. I think he's far more important to the Knicks than he would be to the Sixers, which kind of changes this entire calculation in my mind. So to give you a straight answer, I'm a little bit nervous about OG Anunoby, and I genuinely think Daryl Morey's tactic in this was mainly to drive up the price of OG rather than to have legitimate interest. So I'm not as all in on OG as I would like to be.
I kind of agree to piggyback off that point. I think that OG, there's an argument that he's worth $40 million to the Knicks. And you're right. I've seen OG play enough to where he's never going to run an offense. He's not that guy. He's one of the best defenders in the NBA. Not the greatest offensive player. The Knicks will never need him to. You have Brunson. You have Julius Randle. Both of them can initiate offense at an all-star level. You have Dante DiVincenzo, who's your new sixth man. He showed a lot in the playoffs. I think the Knicks, OG, there's an argument that he's worth that $40 million to the Knicks, where it feels like with the Sixers, it would help if your third guy could initiate some sort of offense or have a sense of shot creation. You have two all-stars who could do it. One of them is the best player in the NBA, or one of the best players in the NBA. When healthy, very arguably the best. I'm a huge Joel Embiid guy personally, which I know my Knicks fans are not going to love that I'm saying that, but I am, man. That too bad. But between him and Maxey and OG and Embiid's health concerns, OG doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really add up when you could get a Brandon Ingram, when you could. Paul George seems less likely now, but if you could get an Ingram, you never know about Paul George yet. The window is still partially open. You guys have options that fit your team way better than OG does. Where I feel like Morey paying OG I think it's also a tactic to just make the Knicks pay more
Yep.
because Morey's good at his job, frankly. Um, I just think there's better options for you guys where going for OG seems kind of pointless.
Yeah, that's mostly where I sit too. And like to give the specifics of what he brings to the table from a production standpoint, during his time with the Knicks, we're talking about OG averaging 14.7 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 1.4 steals, shot 48.9% from the floor overall, 38.2% from three, 45.7% from the corner threes, which I do think is relevant there. But a stat that does stand out to me, 96.1% of all of his threes are assisted. He's a guy that I never expected to be able to have some creation ability. And you kind of brought up Brandon Ingram there. That is a guy that I'm hearing more and more about from the Sixers perspective. And Ingram isn't perfect either. He's a little too mid-range reliant for my liking. We've seen his three-point attempts go down over the years, but he's a guy that's more of a score-first guy and can carry an offense to an extent in a way that I don't see OG ever getting. Now, to play devil's advocate and why there is partial interest from me in OG Anunoby, the price point is going to be an interesting sticking point that I think it's clear like he has every intention of getting paid, and that's really what drove him out of Toronto in the first place, was this journey to get to that max, and New York seemed like the place to do it. If he's wavering from that and wants to play for a contender, bringing in a Mikal Bridges and seeing the way the Celtics built with Jason Tatum, with Jaylen Brown, if the Sixers actually want to contend with these guys, you have to have high-level wing defenders, and it doesn't get much better than OG Anunoby in that category. So I do see the calculus and the angle to move in that direction, but it isn't, I guess, the ideal fit for me.
Yeah, definitely you do. And something I've said about the Knicks specifically is one of the reasons why I love this trade is because I think on a more bare bones note, it does make them a true NBA Finals contender. It doesn't make them the favorite, but I think adding in Mikal, it makes this team, as long as the core stays together, good enough where winning an NBA Finals is an outcome that could very well happen. I think they're the anti-Celtics. They're a team that is always playing with no fear of physicality. They're always overachieving, if anything, with these guys. They all play their best basketball when it matters the most. Julius Randle, the jury's still out on that. But it's still out. He was injured last time around.
Sure.
So I know where you stand on Julius.
Yeah, not a Julius Randle guy.
I had to bring it up for your sake. I know how you stand on him. But they seem like the anti-Celtics, which I think helps the Knicks a lot. But you're right. You need someone to defend these guys. Like, with the Knicks, you need someone who can defend Jalen Brunson. You need someone who's big enough to deal with the strength of Julius Randle. With the Celtics, you need someone good enough to defend Jason Tatum. The Sixers, getting Brandon Ingram doesn't do that. Now,
right.
You have a window to still go out there and find someone who does it. You guys have a draft pick tonight, right?
16th pick, yep.
In theory, and it's not the perfect fit in the world, but he's just a guy who's on the New York Knicks radar, there's always the option of saying, all right, well, we could throw in Ryan Dunn, and it's early to say, all right, well, he'll just guard everyone's best player next year in his first year in the NBA. But scouts have said he's one of the best defenders they've seen in years. With the fact that Joel Embiid is as good of a three-point shooter as any big man in the league who doesn't straight up specialize in it, you can afford to have a guy who's not a great shooter on the team. There's still options out there for Philly. I just don't see, I just don't see the point of them having to go for OG. Now, it would help to some degree. I feel like it would help more if you guys got someone who can just add to making life hell. Because you know Embiid's going to be great. He's never not great. Even when Embiid was compromised in two different ways in the playoffs against the Knicks last year, and he was still the best player on the court. I watched the series. I wanted to say it was Brunson. It wasn't. As great as I think Jalen Brunson's a top 7 player in the NBA. I think Joel Embiid's at very worst a top 5. Embiid was great dealing with Bell's palsy and a severe knee injury where his knee was literally bleeding at points. He's that good. Maxi's that good. We know how great they're. Maxi had a phenomenal series. Adding in someone else on that offensive end, because the Sixers, they stagger the two of them as they should. But if you have a third guy who could hit shots, they would have beaten the Knicks in that. I'm a very realistic fan. The Knicks won that series partially because I think that year they were the better team, but it's also the Sixers didn't have shot creation, partially because Tobias Harris just, you know,
Yeah.
you know.
Chris, you and I each scored the same amount of points as Tobias Harris in Game 6 on fewer shots, so we got that going for us there.
More efficient.
Yeah, more efficient. I do appreciate you acknowledging that about Embiid and the Sixers overall. The other part that I want to bring in and playing a little bit of like negative side of the Sixers here is, in credit to Daryl Morey, he's had to undo a whole lot of past wrongs since he got in control of the Sixers. And everything was built for this summer, that he did clear out the Al Horford contract. He did clear out the Ben Simmons situation, the James Harden situation. The Tobias Harris contract is off the books now. But the other part of that is you sold to Joel Embiid this vision of you have this max slot, we're going to add this third guy. And not only that, you sold to Tyrese Maxey that he wouldn't take his extension last offseason. He would push it off until the end of this summer. And in credit to Tyrese, had an unreal season, got even better, and earned every penny of the max that he's going to sign. But if there isn't that third piece in line here, that brings some real questions about like Daryl Morey and really the belief from the team. And while Tyrese Maxey is not a guy that I expect to be problematic or causing a storm, Rich Paul is his agent, and that is a guy that I know to be problematic and can cause a storm because we've seen that on plenty of different situations. So I just don't want that whisper of Rich Paul getting in Tyrese Maxey's ear about maybe we got to get you to a better location or they're not pulling their weight here. So I do think the pressure is on Daryl Morey that something has to be done in a major way. Again, I am hearing a lot of Brandon Ingram smoke, so I do kind of lean towards that being the move at this point in time, but that's not it either. And to your Ryan Dunn point right here, I love, like, I'll put it this way. I'm scarred from Matisse Thybulle and Ben Simmons. I respect Ryan Dunn. He's more of a dog and has more of like a belief that the guy's actually going to try and get better than I feel about either of those two. There's not the deer in headlights look that we saw from Matisse Thybulle, but as much as like you can afford having a guy, spacing's the name of the game against Joel Embiid. That you just want to create that decision in the opposing defense. It's either we're doubling down on Joel and creating an open three, or we're gonna leave him one-on-one and he's gonna punish you. So having shooters to me is extremely important. I think it'd be a bit too big of a risk with Ryan Dunn there, but I do like where your head's at.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys. I'm obviously as a Knicks fan and as someone who had the full belief of, well, first of all, when the Knicks were the second seed, I was like, I don't want to play Miami or Philly. I would have way rathered Indiana in the first round because the Knicks were healthy enough that they would have beat them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I don't want to see Philly get better because they're good. I want to see you guys not get better. I want to see you guys sign. I want to see you guys let Zach LaVine or something, or do something severely underwhelming, because you guys, when healthy, at the worst, are a top 4 team in the East. You have a player who, despite the health concerns, if Embiid is healthy enough, he can be the best player on a championship team. I know he hasn't been yet. You can't put it all on him. Some of it falls on his shoulders with the health concerns, but he is that good. Maxey is that good. I don't want you guys to get better. Like, I'm not trying to come on here and be like some pro 76ers Knicks fan. It's the fact that I just like them from NBA 2K, if I'm being honest. But like, it's about the fact that I think the Knicks are the second best team in the Eastern Conference. I just don't believe in the Bucks anymore. I think there's just too much turmoil in that front office.
I'm with you, by the way.
Yeah, like, where if Daryl Morey knows what he's doing, which history shows he does, he is looking at this the same way that Leon Rose and the New York Knicks looked at this. Like, all right, well, Boston did not get challenged at all in the playoffs. They played the Heat, who had no Jimmy Butler. They played the Cavs, who were missing Jared Allen, and then later Donovan Mitchell. They played the Pacers, who were missing Tyrese for half the series. And then they played a Mavs with just a bumped and bruised Luka, who just went through the ringer of the Western Conference. It was an easy run. It was the easiest run for a non-super team like the Warriors that I've ever seen. So when you look at things, Daryl Morey's looking at this, I guarantee it, just being a Knicks fan and being in a similar position where he's like, there's an open window for an NBA Finals. We are going right now because we have a superstar and we have to do it.
Yeah.
Daryl Morey's going to look at it that way. The 76ers, I mean, the draft's tonight. There might be a massive move tonight for them. Something has to be coming. You have to imagine, especially with the Knicks being out of the way now. I think the 76ers are poised to get a lot better, and I'd rather you guys didn't if that's a good call.
I appreciate that. I think you're even more optimistic than I am. This just feels like, and even like Mikal Bridges, like while he would have been great and I would have loved to have him in Philadelphia, it's less about like, we missed out on Mikal Bridges and more about like, there's another option that has just been chosen by another team. There's another guy that, or another player that has been handpicked and taken out of the mix here. That is very frustrating from the Sixers perspective. I have two last questions for you before we wrap up here. Number one, we know the Knicks made their choice and clearly that they want to bring back both. If all things were equal, would you prefer OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges?
I would have preferred OG from my orange and blue tinted glasses if I saw what happened. I saw what happened when OG came in. The way he fit with this team, he showed potential that he's never going to be some great offensive player, but he showed potential that if he gets the chance to, he could grow on offense. He's great off the ball offensively. He's had moments where he looks like a light version of Kawhi on offense. Again, he's never going to be Kawhi. I don't want Sixers fans to be like, all right, well, this Knicks fan's an idiot or something. He can be a light version of that where it's like a role player offensively, similar movements, stuff like that. I think OG could grow offensively. I love his fit with the Knicks. I would go OG.
Interesting. I'm surprised to hear you say that. I think my answer, I mean, again, I said this earlier, but I think OG far more important to the Knicks than really any other team, that I do think he's that perfect fit there. So I see the direction. And then the last thing, you kind of mentioned it in the last one, but I'm with you that Celtics are number 1 in the East and Knicks are number 2. And frankly, I would even put a little bit of a gap with the Bucks. I'm completely skeptical, and I've lived through the Doc Rivers experience, and I don't think that is a plus side in their direction right there. So I'm absolutely with you. If they line up and play 7 right now, how are you feeling about Celtics versus Knicks?
I think there's no way that series doesn't go to 6 or 7 games.
Yeah.
If in a world where everyone's fully healthy, and the fact is, between Porzingis and Mitchell Robinson, one of these teams is going to be injured, but let's say they're not. Let's say everyone's healthy on each side. I think the Knicks are just too good at being the anti-Celtics. Styles make these series so awkward, and the Knicks are more poised for that playoff basketball. We're going to literally beat you up. I mean, we got on before the 76ers-Knicks series, and you were saying it. You're like, no, the Knicks play violent basketball. Like,
yeah,
it's violence. I don't think the Celtics, and in the way that the 76ers, I mean, the Knicks were playing rough with them, and Joel Embiid's like, I'm 7 foot tall, 300 pounds. I'm fine with this. I'll throw it right back at you guys, which is what made it the best playoff series in the playoffs.
Agreed.
that was awesome. It was an awesome series. I think it's why I gained a lot more respect for Philly, even though you guys were annoying me. It was just it was just fun. You got to respect that. Just the work these teams did, how much they wanted it. I don't know if the Celtics have that dog in them, where they want to get in a violent series, whether it's with the Knicks or the Sixers or even the Bucks. If for some reason the Bucks remember that, I don't know, they should play defense or something.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm biased. I want to say the Knicks. I think definitely after you give the Knicks a year to figure this thing out, they will be better. I think it could take a year. I think long-term the Knicks could take the Celtics and be the best team in the East. Interesting.
Yeah, I do think the Celtics they earned my respect this year, obviously, because they won a championship in a way that they haven't in past years. The Tatum questions are always going to be there a little bit, the Tatum and Brown stuff, which I think is going to be interesting to see develop from here now that they have gotten over the hump and have a ring on their finger here. But I do think it's pretty up for grabs. And kind of my closing thoughts here is, to Daryl Morey, it's time to get active. It's a disrespect to Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey to have these types of talents and not have a Sixers team that is in these same exact conversations. So I get there's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts around the league, but you simply have to find a way to make it happen, because there is no reason why a Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey led team should not be among the top 2 or top 3 contenders in the East, which right now they're just straight up not. That it is a blank canvas what this roster is. So that's kind of where I'm at from the Sixers perspective. Maybe OG Anunoby's a part of it, maybe Brandon Ingram, but it's got to be somebody. So any closing... Ben Simmons coming back? Yeah, I hope not on that one, man. But I am starting to see that's how down bad Philadelphia is, as I have seen those floating around on Twitter. So any closing thoughts from you?
No, honestly, look, I think from an outsider perspective, obviously this is on Sixers Digest, so as an outsider, of someone who knows the team well through playoff matchups and just being in the same division and knowing how good the Sixers are, I think there's no reason why, with having Daryl Morey and with us both agreeing the Bucks they're done, their window's it's over.
Yeah.
I don't think Dame's ever going to be healthy
Yeah.
again, being honest. I think the 76ers have no excuse to not be a top 3 team in the East. Doesn't mean they have to be a 3 seed, but they have to be one of the 3 best teams in the Eastern Conference. I think right now the Knicks and Celtics are obviously 1 and 2 because the Sixers have Embiid, Maxey, and Paul Reed under contract and no one else. I do think they have to make it established that they are right there with both the Knicks and the Celtics as a top 3 team in the East. I obviously don't know it that well. At some point, if they don't pull that off, Joel Embiid is going to get upset with you guys.
Yep.
There's only so much patience an NBA player can have.
Yep, you're spot on there. So it's got to happen this offseason, Daryl. You got to figure it out. And Embiid, to his credit, has been one of the more loyal superstars across all of sports, really. So you owe it to the guy. Find a way to make it happen. But, Chris, I appreciate you hopping on, chopping it up with me. I know we took a decent bit of your time here. For everybody that has not subscribed yet, make sure you are smashing that button and checking out everything on Knicks Digest as well. Drop any thoughts that you got in the comments, and make sure you are liking this video. We're going to have a ton of content coming out as the draft is kicking off, and all of free agency immediately after, so a crazy point. So make sure you're subscribing to stay tapped in for all of that. I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.